As a disclaimer, some of our episodes discuss topics that may not be fit for a younger audience. Some episodes also contain some swearing. This show was produced by the Geek Happy Network, constantly curious about the things we love. If you enjoy listening to Represented, remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Remember to leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hi, I'm Jamie Mack. Welcome to the Represented Podcast.
My name is Mick Narciso, and you are listening to the Represented Podcast.
What's up? My name is Robert Mudhama, aka Lucid.
Hi everyone, my name is Noni Rubia and you're listening to Represented Podcast.
A journey through the lives of everyday people
such as yourself.
Such as yourself.
Check me out on episode 2 of season 1.
Listen to me on episode 9, season 1.
Episode 7 of season 1.
I think I couldn't be more happier and more like myself now.
It opened my eyes to why I think and feel the way I do.
And they inadvertently teach me how to be more creative.
And I'm excited to share that story.
Greetings and welcome to the Represented Podcast. I'm your host, Kanyeki Kamawe. I just had a quick note about this episode you're about to get into. Having run into a few interruptions during the time of recording with our guests, this episode is somewhat of an attempt to salvage as much of the conversations as possible with both our guests. We happen to have two guests in the studio for the first time in this season, both Noni and her cousin, who happens to be her namesake. There was an interesting account of the first Noni, who happened to be in season 1 as well, with her experiences traveling to Mexico. And she also shares a bit about why both cousins were in Kenya at the same time at the time. And it had to do with a family loss, which both cousins shared aspects of that experience that really spoke to me. So I hope you enjoy parts of this conversation we were able to save and present to you. Do continue to support the podcast and look out for more episodes in the future for sure. And definitely still looking forward to talking to Noni at some point in the future again when we can have a full sit down like we did the first time. I hope you still enjoy our quick conversations with both Nonis. Shout out to both of them and all the best. Thank you and peace. Today's guest is a return guest. Yay. And happens to be one of the most beloved episodes of season 1. So welcome Noni Rubia back to the podcast.
Hi everyone.
And Noni came with family too. You may not be able to see her right now, but hopefully we'll also get a chance to talk to her later on. Noni's namesake.
Yeah, Noni.
And so yeah. So welcome Noni.
Thank
to
you.
Represented once again.
Oh my
Such
gosh.
an honor to have you back.
Thank you.
And yeah, this is amazing because
This is crazy.
Yeah, this podcast was it didn't exist, and like here it is being a part of my life in an interesting way. And having you back here in Kenya for other reasons that may not be as pleasant, but just like you were saying before we even started, you walking with me through this journey of starting the podcast and all that stuff and expressing your story and all the responses you got, I think is just amazing, just because that's amazing.
Thank
I don't know
you.
what it means, but
Yeah,
it's just really cool.
it's awesome.
Yeah, I just think it's dope that we get to have that experience together. And I'm really fortunate to have you here again to tell us how you've been.
Oh
And,
my gosh,
you know, like from the last episode, you told us a lot about some of your future plans. Also, okay, maybe let's start with why you're back home in the first place. Get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And like kind of not get it out of the way, like it's not
Yeah, no, I
important.
get what
But
you're saying,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, I guess, why you're here in the first place, why you
yes.
get to do this. So would you like to tell us why you're back home and not in Vancouver like we left you last season?
Hi everyone. Oh my god, you guys need to be here. This is such a beautiful studio. The vibe, it's the growth. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me and having me back. I feel like this was definitely ordained. I mean, I know, like you said, coming home was not the most pleasant ways, but it's also had been one of the best trips I've ever made to Kenya, which is so weird to say. But yeah, so unfortunately, I lost my grandfather on December 23rd. And so, yeah, it has been, and it still is a tough time for everybody, for family. Everyone's trying to just get their closure and understand, because that man was the most healthiest person I'd ever met. At 96, he had skin glowing like Naomi Campbell, like without makeup. It was just wow.
That's where you get yours from.
Yeah. Oh gosh, well, so yeah, so we have some pretty good genes. Like even my cousin here, who's asleep.
Yeah. Shout out to the cousin.
Shout out to the cousin.
She's standing strong,
She's
or sitting
standing
strong,
strong,
sitting very strong. We have. I won't expose the current conditions of this interview.
Right.
It's always deeper than rap. We just can't share everything. We share a lot, but
not everything.
Right now, things are just flowing how they're flowing. But so yeah, back to Noni number one.
So he passed on. He was like, even my dad was saying the day before he had driven himself to like the supermarket. And at 96, it's impressive because sometimes most people would either be can barely walk, talk, and do stuff. But he was able to do everything that we, like young people, still can do now. And so it came as a shock, for sure. His death was a shock. But at the same time, he left peacefully because he was a peaceful man. And a lot of things were said during his funeral about how he was such a peaceful man and how it was not a surprise that he died peacefully because I think God just kind of picks up on your energy. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel, so, and I'm just glad we never had to worry about him if he was in hospital, like, the visiting. And so, so came home had to plan a trip within 3 days, was able to get back and made it in time for the funeral. So the past week and a half has just been spending time with family a lot, something that I have never actually done my whole life. Like, my friends are my family, you guys are like my family. So having to actually spend time with blood family was different. It slapped different.
Let's talk about it, because I've been going through the exact same thing this whole year myself. So I totally I can relate to that like overdose of family you get after being like super friend focused.
Right, and also being alone out there, we barely have time for ourselves. Can you imagine trying to keep up with family and people wonder why you're quiet and why you don't communicate? But coming home has been very eye-opening. I came home with my brother, Wanyeke, who hasn't been home in almost 4 years. Yeah. So even for him, even taking a mat, I was like, guy, what do I do? It was crazy because
Kenya has changed. When was the last time he was home?
2015.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
towards the end of 15. So he's been away for a while, and he hasn't really like left Canada after. He just kind of went to
stayed
school.
The whole course.
Yeah, I just dived in, went to school, went to work, and just doing the damn thing. But so we're home together and we've been spending time together. And it's funny because my brother and I never used to spend time. I think this is the first time in a long time we spent time together.
I remember from the last interview we did, the shout out you gave your bro was that he was what? He was
selfish.
Something. Something. It was very like you were kind of like bad boy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because we didn't have a very strong relationship. But also, even being out there together, we still had to kind of bond because we were now together alone in a foreign country, but different cities. But we still didn't get time to see each other. Because in the 4 or 5 years he's been away, I've only seen him twice or thrice, which is not I mean, I've seen more people that I don't need to be seeing more than I
Yeah,
do my
yeah.
brother. So I think that was like a wake-up call. But this time now that we've been together, home together, we've hung out together, we've partied together. I've never partied with my brother.
wow.
Yeah, like go out to a club. And what's the best place to start is Nairobi, because gosh, Nairobi.
It's different.
Watu,
You guys were
hamlali.
out last night.
We were out last night, we were out the night before. Like,
Wow.
it's just been one of those things where I wasn't ready for the
You're
energy.
getting a full dose of like
Yeah.
Kenya. You're getting like a shot of Kenya.
It's
like,
true.
Yeah.
It's like people party till 6 a.m, but in Vancouver, you even have time for a skincare routine when you're out from the club to go to bed. So there are so many things that have happened that have been so wonderful. This trip to Kenya has been the best. I mean, honestly, I have one, like, I can barely compare with other times, but I think coming home and seeing my dad too, who has been unwell, and it has been also super tough on the family. It's been, I think it's just what I needed, because the past year and a half, like, oh man, wow.
Tell us. No, this is
Yo.
this is what we are all here for.
Right?
We wanna hear what Noni's been up to.
What has been up
what's
to.
been going on the last year and a half.
Yeah, the last year and a half have been hard, like in a good way too, because I've gained strengths that I didn't know I had. So, last time I spoke about my dreams and passion, my new passion for traveling, and how I was so excited to see the world, the countries. So yeah, I've done a few countries. I've done Bali, I've done Singapore, I've done New York again, I've done Mexico, and it's been exciting because these are countries I thought I would have to take so long to kind of go to. It's always easy to start with local areas, places not too far away. But I went to Mexico. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've been waiting to hear like the full story.
The full story of what happened. Yeah. So we got to Mexico with my friend, and we rented an Airbnb. So the plan was to do 3 nights, an Airbnb, 3 nights at a hotel. Because when I travel, I'm not trying to just go to a hotel where I'm getting a towel and food, like things I can get easily in Vancouver or anywhere else. So I'm trying to explore a city. So we kind of decided, let's do half and half. We meet each other halfway, because my friend wanted to be more in the resort, which was also fine. So we get to the Airbnb, and it was so nice. In fact, the area didn't look dingy. It was such a nice place. You, in your head, you'd never actually think anything crazy would go. A lot of people ironically had warned me before, like, what, Airbnb in Mexico? And I'm like, nah.
So that's like something people know. It's
people
common
have
knowledge.
been saying, yeah, but you see, the thing is too, people said that about Cuba.
Okay.
But Cuba was the best experience for me and my friends. Like, it was safer than even Vancouver. You turn East Hastings, you don't know what's gonna happen to you. So yeah, I couldn't imagine. Like, after being to Cuba and seeing it for myself and seeing the joy of people, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take anyone's word for it. I want to actually go explore the city, take it all in, and then move on to something else. So yeah, so I rented Airbnb. We get there. We had landed each at separate times. Just Kim coming in from Toronto. I was coming in from Vancouver. So we landed. I had to wait for at the airport. We drove took a bus. So I'd done a lot of research, because cabs from now Cancun into Tulum are like $100-$200 US. Please, that slaps different in Canadian dollars, because it's difficult and expensive. So I had found alternatives, like a bus that they have, a regular bus that runs a few times a day. So we took that bus, got to the place, took a cab, got to the Airbnb. We get there, we're fascinated. Of course, me, take out my phone, Snapchat, Instagram stories. Then we were like, let's grab something to eat. And we were super tired, so we wanted to save our energies for the next day. So we had no intentions of doing anything, like going out or drinking. So we got there, we found a taco stand, we ate. And the thing was, we never saw anybody. We never met anyone. No one welcomed us into the Airbnb. We had everything pre-sent to us through the app.
Okay.
So even to see if there was any workers or anyone we could ask for help, none at all. So it was very weird. Anyway, so fast forward, we finished our food, we head back to the place, we chill, we listen to music. By 9 o'clock, we were in bed. And so we decided to share one room, and we left our stuff in another room. And so at like 2 a.m, my friend wakes up and she's like, man, I'm having some weird feeling. But she wanted to use the bathroom. She said, can you come with me? And I'm like, Okay. Like, no, it's just stand at the door. I'm just having some eerie feeling. And the moment you said that, I started also feeling some type of way. I was like, So we actually prayed and we were like, Lord, whatever it is, can you please like cover us? Like, I don't know. We couldn't hear any noises, nothing. So we woke up in the morning, got ready to work, to get ready to go out and start the day. And we're ready to get our purse, and I can't find my purse. My friend could find her purse, but it was empty. Mine I couldn't find. Man, my heart dropped.
Damn.
It didn't even seem real because the house was as neat as we left it the night before. They barely stole anything else. It was literally, they knew where they were going. And what was so scary was, what if they didn't find anything? If they came into our room,
Yikes.
And it was an inside job because no doors were broken, no windows were broken.
Damn.
We knew we'd been broken into, and we found her purse was empty. Then there were footprints on the wall.
Oh man, on the wall.
On the wall. So that means they must have jumped in from the outside.
Damn.
So they must have opened the window. Like, actually, just when I say that,
Whoa, that's creepy.
it was creepy.
That's really creepy.
It was creepy. So of course, then I'm panicking. I'm like, okay, I don't have a passport.
Yeah.
How am I gonna get back into the country? Let alone Kenya, because Kenya you can just whatever. But Canada, it's like, and if you remember from my previous podcast, I mentioned that I was like figuring out with my papers, trying to get my papers in order.
Yeah.
So you can imagine at that time,
Man.
my papers were still very
wishy-washy.
So I was like, oh my goodness.
The worst timing.
The
ever.
worst time ever. I think that's 2019 started like that for me.
Damn.
So I called the embassy and I'm like in Canada, right? So the Kenyan High Commission in Canada. And I say, hi, so my name is Madhani and my passport, blah, blah. And the guy was like, do hivi, nipigie kesho, tunafunga in 15 minutes.
No, damn.
So physically he was saying,
What?
please call me tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're opening in 15 minutes. I mean, we're closing in 15 minutes. It's like, I don't have time for this. I'm like, I just told you I've been robbed. I'm in a foreign country. And you completely, like, nonchalantly turned off this conversation. I was like, wow, must be nice. Can't relate. Vitu kwa drowned. Need different. So, I was using somebody else's phone. So a good Samaritan who was a neighbor to us who just opened that when we were like, we had left the doors open. So he helped. So he was a Norwegian gentleman who lives in Mexico and has lived there like for 25 years. So he kind of knew things and everybody around. So he helped call the police. We wrote a report. And the police there are almost equally as corrupt because they kept asking for money.
Oh, man.
I'm just like, bro, I just got robbed. Like, sasa nikupe pesa kutoka wapi. It was so frustrating. Every time we went, so it was hard to believe. I was in denial even till the last day I left. I still couldn't believe that happened. Because, you lose things in life, You can lose your phone, you can lose your passport. But your passport,
Man.
especially
And
when
you're
you know that's your only ticket in and out of places. It doesn't seem real. It hits heavy, right? So at this point, I still didn't understand this was real. I kept having so much confidence that I would find that passport, that the police would do their job, that I would actually. So I kept living in denial. So my friend was like, so halfway through this whole thing, I'm like, okay, let's go eat. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, nah, let's go eat. So we rented a bike. We rode our bikes and we had a bit of, like, we had to now withdraw money from her card because she still had an extra card. So I had nothing. Like to the last dollar they took. So we had lunch. So of course I posted the story on my stories and I was like, guys, like, we've been robbed, but we're fine. And I had so much confidence in the system. I was like, yeah, I'm sure these cops got this. Wapi. Telling you, I think after they had left me and in my report, I was just never to be remembered, right? So what they even did was we reported, they drove us to like the municipal council, so like city council downtown or something, and had like get me to write a report of what happened or say it, and they would write it, and then the office of the governor or president would sign it and something that would allow me. So again, ignorance. The policeman told me that paper could get me out of Mexico, that it wouldn't matter, no matter what, people get robbed all the time, you can get out. So I'm like, bro, like, I know I was born yesterday, but really? And he literally was insisting on that. So my friend and I took a bus the next day to the airport, 2-hour bus, yeah, and we go with that people, and I'm like, hey, Wagwan, can we, take a plane to the lady looked at me and just laughed. She was like, you guys are not serious.
Whoa.
You think this is, especially with everything that's going on in the world today. So, of course, I'm frustrated. I go back. So now we moved. So we felt uncomfortable. And we report, okay, so this was also what was more suspicious, that the Airbnb host didn't seem surprised. She played very, oh my goodness, that's so sad. But then she was not like, didn't even make effort. She was like, so we tell her, first we need a refund. Secondly, we need you to either pay for our hotel for the next 2 nights because we're not staying here. And third, wow, shame on you,
Yeah.
So she kind of was like, trying to not make it look so serious, like, oh, you find your passport, don't worry. I know people who know people who know people. She played that card. So basically, we finally, I've lost that track of the story. Okay, yeah. So so Airbnb, so she didn't even report to Airbnb. So I had to report it to Airbnb, the platform itself. They got back to me, and then so now she was supposed to find us a place to stay. So she finds us a place to stay. My goodness. Would rather have slept on the streets.
Oh, man.
That place was dingy and scary. Man. It had cockroaches and rats.
Oh, man.
And it was even in such a scary place. The doors didn't even have locks. Yikes. I'm like, was she serious? So I took a picture of it. My friend was like, let's take a picture of this room. Let's send it to Airbnb and let's show them what this girl or lady, whatever she was is doing. With complete madharau. So luckily I had a friend who had hotel points, so we used the points to stay at a nicer hotel.
Oh man, that's lucky.
So that was the first night. Now you can imagine every night from that day I was sleeping not knowing where I was sleep.
Yeah, damn.
It was scary. It was like, I remember calling my cousin Noni right here, and she was like, what, are you serious? Like, you should tell your parents. But man, I was so scared of telling my parents at the time, because first of all, I hadn't been working prior to that, between November to March. And so they would be like, where did you get your money to go? You should be serious about saving. So it was just one of those things where I was caught between a rock and a hard place. And at the same time, I also was nervous, like if my mom would actually help me. Like, it was just a messy situation.
And how long did all this happen? Like, what was the time span between when it
happened? I was stranded for 2 months.
Wow.
7 weeks, 7.5 weeks.
Sheesh.
So I left for Mexico on March 13th. I landed in Canada on May 11th. So just shy 2 days from 2 months. And it's crazy saying that. Yeah. For people on social media, it looked like I was on vacation. As in the same time, I didn't want attention because I was nervous of how it would go. I'm alone. I was very aware I was black. They made sure I knew I was black.
Oh, that's a thing though.
Yeah, and I would, like, when I moved to Mexico City, to go get, now I had to wait for my passport sent to me in Tulum, had to fly now to Mexico City to deal with the embassy, Canadian embassy. And I remember walking down the street and this guy just started calling me a Nigero monkey. Right? Yikes is right. He just literally called me Nigero monkey. So at the time, it hadn't clicked it was me, because I've never had that outright call, like someone saying
That's like some 1940s.
Yeah.
Racism.
So then he kept walking now towards me and pointing to me and saying Nigero monkey, and nobody, I kid you not. And like Mexico City is densely populated, talking 22 million people in that city. It's one of the most populated cities in the world, and you can imagine there were people around me, but they did nothing. They laughed. So I got scared and I ran into, I started running. Well, I didn't run. I just walked really quickly and kind of cuttered into the nearest Starbucks.
All right.
Okay.
So, Noni number 2.
Yep, that's me. Actually, Noni number 3.
Number 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so you are the Noni I know's cousin, and we met today.
Yeah.
And we have zero context, which is always amazing and interesting. Cool. So, we'll just figure it out as we go along. But I heard you didn't grow up. I mean, you don't live in Kenya. You didn't grow up and you don't live in Kenya. You're also just visiting.
Yeah.
So where were you born and raised?
So I was born here in Kenya, Nairobi.
Okay.
And basically moved to Scotland, Glasgow. I stay in Glasgow. Yeah, so I basically moved to Scotland when I was around 6 years old. So I actually left Kenya and moved to London, and I stayed there for about a year, and then we moved to Glasgow a year later when I was 6. So yeah, I was pretty much raised there, went to school there, went to high school there, did college there, and then pretty much now my, let's say, adult age, or trying to anyway, I moved to England for work, and so yeah, I'm currently there.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice. So like out of all that movement, has there been a place that stuck out to you as having like your best memories in life, or is it kind of where you're at right now? Like
Yes, that's a bit of a tricky one, especially because so basically I went to university as well in Sheffield, so I've kind of like jumped around places through the different cities that I did live in the UK. It was like different sort of times in my life, so you know, in I recall obviously Scotland is where I grew up, so that's where I was predominantly just like a child. I was young, and then by the time I was going to university was now around that 19 age to about like 24. So I was, or 23 let's say, and I was you know, that was just uni and all that, the, you know, the sort of madness that comes with that. And then now my supposed adult age, I have moved to England to work, and it's now about that whole adulting,
adult
and, you know,
life,
I'm working. So it's 3 different stages. So to answer that for me right now, I guess it would have to be my current situation.
Of course,
because it is the path that I'm obviously on right now.
I can definitely appreciate that whole adulting in a particular place, and that being, because for me, I adulted in Vancouver, and that was my first experience adulting. And so that's kind of where I figured out myself, and then now having to kind of transition back home has been interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine that would. Yeah, especially because when you're far out, you're pretty much by yourself.
Yeah.
You learn to do things, you know, your certain way, and then you come back 9 times out of 10, you go into your parents' house, and it's a situation where it's like back to their rules, but you're like, I've advanced from that. So that would be an interesting story to hear.
Yeah, man, it's such a dance. It's crazy. But here I am 1 year in, and I haven't died yet. So
that's amazing. Congratulations on the 1 year.
Yeah, it's working out okay so far, I guess. What did you study in uni?
So I did law when I
law. Okay, awesome. And are you working as a lawyer right now? Or?
No, I'm currently not a lawyer, but I do work in a law firm.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to figure out the field that I am sort of, you know, trying to go to, and so right now it's financial mis-selling and mortgages and stuff, and that's as interesting as it gets. Pretty much.
Paying the bills must happen.
That's priority number one over there, isn't it? Because nobody's coming to bail you out anymore.
No, I mean, like, it just is what it is. So like, how, if you don't mind me asking, I know this is like a taboo thing, but how old are you now?
I'm 25, so I'm 2 years younger than Noni.
Okay, cool. 25, interesting. Yeah, I'm 27, so I'm kind of like 2 years removed, but I feel like I felt a thing when I turned 25.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was all in my head.
Definitely. No, there is. Yeah. There is. And people tell you that's what's going to happen. They're like, oh, I'll change to 25. And you just can't comprehend how the change of one day, that one set of 24 hours, you celebrate your birthday, and then, you know, all of a sudden your life is different. But yeah, there is some sort of responsibility that comes with that age, and it can be, nobody even has to say it. It's just one of those things. You just feel it, like, you know, your parents are like, okay, so next step, what's going on? And so nobody has to say it, but you know it's there, like, you have to grow up. There's no, you're not getting away with nonsense anymore. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So it is, it might actually just be a personal pressure that we all just put on ourselves.
I see you wearing the Kenyan bracelets.
Yeah, I've got quite a few.
So that's obviously still important to you.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Why is being Kenyan still so important to you?
Oh gosh, we're the East, where is it? We're the East, we're the West, home is always best.
Yeah.
So my Guka used to always tell us. I mean, I just think it's very important to never lose yourself. You always have to remember where you came from, where you started, whether it was good, whether it was bad. Your roots are, you know, very important. I actually don't know much about mine, but you know, the older that I'm getting, I am trying to learn and trying to obviously become more buds. Like I don't speak Swahili, and I don't speak Kikuyu. And for some people, and, you know, like my older grandparents and stuff, they're just
taboo
like,
as hell.
you know, what's going on? It's the worst thing. I'm like the worst child, and I'm like, dude, we didn't need to.
It's not my
use
fault.
that.
Like,
It's really not. Do you know what I mean? So,
yep.
For us, it is stuff that I would like to, you know, become more aware with. But then my granddad as well, he was very important to me, and he was such an impactful man. But he was also like, he was a patriot of Kenya. He really was one of the most patriotic people I knew, and for us it was just so close to home. I mean, for me personally, I didn't even know that, you know, the type of person or what he was involved with throughout his life until I was much older, because, you know, for us he was just Guka. But I think from a very young age we've been taught to remember sort of where we came from, and, you know, we've always got a home to go back to, even though that we're there, and we will always be welcome. So I think it is very important. This is the one country that I know will never, they will never abandon me, they'll never leave me. That's my people. So
I'm living proof of that.
Yeah, exactly,
I landed
exactly.
somewhere. So that's always really, I mean, speaking of your granddad, I don't know if you're willing to how much you're willing to share about him, but because I personally found this out this month, when like Noni was talking about his passing and stuff. And then what happened was, I guess I got reminded who he was. I didn't really know exactly who he was. I knew he was someone, but then now when my own family started talking about it, so it was like a common story I kept hearing people talking about it. But like the thing I found interesting, or the thing that stood out to me, was the fact that he was the first African mayor of Nairobi.
Yes.
And that's super. That's a unique thing to like have in your bloodline.
Definitely.
Does that, like, how much of that informed any of your raising, if it did at all?
So you're actually, surprisingly, like I said, I found out pretty late. It wasn't anything that was sort of really spoken about much, because by the time that we were old enough to understand what was happening and what had happened, because obviously my grandfather did go through quite a lot throughout his time, by the age that I personally was understing, you know, he'd already finished all of that. He was now
just a
Do you know what I mean?
grandfather
Yeah,
trying
he
to
was just
just
a
chill.
grandfather and a businessman, and as far as we knew, he had this business, and that was just it. It wasn't really into politics, and you know, the life wasn't all crazy and stuff. So it'd be very hard.
Wasn't really a factor.
It really wasn't a factor growing in, but then obviously you're just in awe, like the older when you found out your stories.
Yeah.
It
How
might
about right now? Like, how does it impact you right now? Understanding more and more about who he was, or
it's crazy, because before you'd be able to you know, hear.
Thanks for walking right by the camera. So Noni came back, in case you didn't notice. I'm sure there was enough noise and just.
I've lost my trail of thought again.
I guess I was
Train of
asking. I asked about if it's had, like, what kind of impact it's having now. The more you learn.
So when I used to come, I used to stay with my granddad majority of the time when I used to travel back from the UK. So with all the time that we used to spend, I would quiz him on everything that happened. You know, he told me about all the stories, you know, what he went through, the good, the bad. Like, I mean, Maguka taught himself how to speak Spanish while he was detained.
Wow.
So, and he was like in a prison block by himself. I'm telling you, it's like probably the size of this wall, all the way up, and like he was in a whole block by himself, because they wouldn't want to keep people near him and everything, to try and, you know, make him go crazy, etc. And going far, so basically, he was a very intelligent man, and I think for me, so a lot of those stories were just, you know, enhanced during his funeral. We heard a lot of people giving tributes and stuff, but I can't say for sure there was anything that anyone said about my granddad that I did already think about him. He was just phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? He was like the best man that I knew, the most powerful. Like, he was just everything. I really do not know how to put it into words what he meant, or what type of person that he was. So yeah, there was nothing that surprised me about. The only thing that was surprising is just how much support that we did get throughout the whole time. But yeah, he was pretty phenomenal, and I do aspire to one day be at least a quarter of a man or have, just hold myself to his. Oh gosh, he was just phenomenal. So
Yeah. How has your perspective shifted about home, like the more you visit and stuff? Like, what's that like? Because you're looking at Kenya from a very different lens
yeah, that's true.
than some people. So, like, what do you see from
Yeah.
your perspective?
Shout out to the Summer Bunnies.
Yeah,
2019.
right. Summer Bunnies 2019. Oh,
Summer
Lord.
Bunnies 2019.
I apologize. I'm giving them a
Thank you,
platform.
thank
I know they come here, all they do is drink alcohol. They just
Honestly.
want to go to the alchemist and they just want to party and they're
Party
driving their
after
parents'
party.
cars and they're causing traffic. I know. I am sorry.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah. So, oh gosh, yeah, Summer Bunnies. Forgot about that.
Yeah, clearly it's fun.
Yeah, definitely. The older that I got, my perspective changed. So obviously I said earlier that I didn't leave Kenya when I was 5. So for me, coming back at the earlier ages was, we get to spend time with Noni, we get to see our cousins, and it's all about that innocent stuff in family and everything. Then after I'd gone to uni, I'd obviously met a lot of international friends, who I am now still friends with today. So coming back was now, okay, we're going to go out because it's the lifestyle that we were living, in uni. And then now we're here, let's go party with all my international friends. And then now this particular trip, I'd actually come for a wedding. My big cousin was getting married. I was in her wedding, her lineup. And obviously, unfortunately, at the same time, we did lose my grandfather. So now all our cousins came over. Now, the funny thing is, we haven't all ever been in the same room ever, I think, in our lives, right?
Wow.
Right. Like, so there's
crazy.
4 Modonis.
Yeah.
We've got 3 Wanyoikes, Anyambura, Akuria. That's pretty much it, right? Yeah, so that's all of us. And basically, we've never, ever all once been in the same room since we were all born.
Wow.
The eldest of us being 37 and the youngest of us being 21. So,
okay.
yeah, so for
You guys are
us,
fairly close, like age-wise.
Yeah, we are. In terms of age, we are very, very close. And so for us, I think that was crazy because it was like our grandfather was all about his grandchildren and family and everything like that. But yet we'd never, but yet now his passing is what brought us all
you
together.
Yeah.
So we've spent a lot of time over the last week as well, going out, just having laughs, and it is something that we probably wouldn't have honestly imagined happening, just because we all live so different lives. Everyone is so far. One's in South Africa, we're in the UK, they're in Canada, some are here, so we are quite widely spread. So for me, this trip I think has been bittersweet, like Wadani had said earlier. It came with the good and the bad. I've gotten closer to my cousins, but at the same time, obviously lost a very great man.
Yeah, for sure. It's always interesting to see if someone kind of lives their life, I guess, what you'd consider the right way, how they can have a positive impact even when they die. Like this time where something forces the family to kind of
push together.
Yeah, it's super important. And it's like dope that you guys are taking advantage of it and like really connecting.
Of course, that's true.
I feel like I said, picking up from where we left, it's like amongst Mexico being crazy and having that experience, which I feel like I would never wish upon anyone. It's like so many things happened last year, 2019 being. I lost my grandfather, my mom's side as well. And then now I lost my grandfather just 7 days before the end of the year. So there was deaths in the family. And as much as, that happens to, like, we inevitably die, it's one of those things where it's so deep. It's heavy, especially when it's, for me, I think I've only had probably one person who's passed away that has really meant so much to me, like Uncle Jonjo. That was probably one of our uncles. That was probably one of the hardest, losses I've ever incurred. And so I feel like my gukas, both of them, because they were both close to me in different ways, like slapped different. And especially with the year being already heavy, it was hard settling in, especially coming back from Mexico and kind of finding a grounding. I came back with like so many expenses and things to pay back, people to pay back because they were so helpful. And also just I reconnected with myself when I was there, you know. I learned I could do so many things I didn't think I was capable of. And I learned how to be okay with being alone, you know. Not alone as a person, but like alone in my own space. I always thought I would need people, which is not wrong. We do all need someone to survive, or not to survive, but we were not created to be lone beings, is what I'm trying to say. But also having time to yourself is important, which is something I took for granted. I picked up on journaling when I was there, like putting things in a diary.
Yeah. Oh, that's epic.
Yeah, because I really wanted to be like, I want to look back a year from now.
That's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be I can't wait to share that, because I feel like I'll read that and feel like I'm reading a book or something.
That's how I feel about these episodes, because it's like more so than just being like, oh, content, 2019, 2020, we're all recording things. It's like, it's always interesting to have a record of like certain periods of life. That's usually because like even if we did the first one like maybe a year and some change ago, like so much has happened already that you can look back at that time and already see like you've come from somewhere else. And it's always it's always dope to kind of like have that perspective on yourself, I think, which is why
You're
I like,
right.
yeah, so.
No,
yeah.
that's been everything. Like, I don't know. I feel like it almost like, it was like this year, the past year was almost a push for change in anything that I was struggling with. And I know a lot of people can relate with how their year, what that year meant to them. Many people I've met have felt like they've struggled. It's been a very tough year, whether it's emotionally, physically, financially. It's like, oh, fuck, I had to change. Like I had to, it was like a shift change that was unavoidable. And it's either you go with that or you decide to stick by what you know, and you're like, okay. And you end up finding yourself being in a rat race where you're constantly trying to keep up with why things are going like this, why are things hard. I don't know. So my year and a half in a nutshell has been beautiful, painful, more, but with beauty comes pain, I guess. But it was very tough, with also my dad getting sick and learning that, you know, it's important to eat healthy, kids. Please eat healthy.
What is he? Do you mind me asking?
So
what
now,
is it ill with?
he has kidney failure.
Oh man.
Yeah, so for both kidneys actually, and he has to go for dialysis like 3 times a week, and it's hard. Like he's lost so much weight in a span of 6 months. Yeah, like a lot. And I've been he doesn't share it with us because he doesn't want us to be worried. But you know, there's been moments when he's had like lapses in the hospitals. And so he was also moving from Mombasa to Nairobi. It was a transition for him. And I think that too was like so much pressure, trying to keep up with his health, trying to move into a new city that he's not known. Like Nairobi has been, like, he'd been away from Nairobi for nearly 18 to 20 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was different. So that's too, being away from home and knowing those things are happening, and then just like, why? Like, you know.
If you'd like to get in touch with the Represented Podcast, feel free to hit up at Represented Podcast on Instagram or email us at representedpodcast@gmail.com. This show is hosted and created by myself, Kanyeki Kamawe. Editing by Lucid and myself. Video directed by James Kamawe. Video editing by myself, Kanyeki Kamawe. Intro music by Lucid and Mari Nasiso.